Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media Production. Today we're talking about dents in your heads and taking dents out of the heads and whether or not what we're about to do is a good idea or not. If you've stuck with us in the past, we've talked about a lot of different ways to damage drum heads, a lot of different fixes to keep your sound going, make your heads last as long as possible, and this kind of falls directly in the center of that category. This is something that a lot of people see other drummers do, and then you adopt it, and then you start to do it all the time, and it goes like this. You put dents in your drum heads with your sticks, and you take them out with a lighter or a match. I learned this when I was a little kid from an older drummer, and it's a little bit of a tricky thing. We're gonna do it. But first of all, we wanna show you what these drums sound like right now. Sound like these drums generally always sound. Real nice. We have coated G12s all over everything. And now we're going to jump right in and basically put as much of a set of dents in these things as we possibly can. Let's talk about the primary culprits for this issue. There are several. They start basically with the angle of your drums. That's the first one that I noticed got better when I fixed it. And that has to do basically with the angle at which you're striking the drums. If you're striking the drums at a really steep angle, which is to say having the drums tipped toward you, you're kind of putting the energy in across the surface instead of directly in, which can result in dents pretty super fast. Of course, we have to talk about, when we're talking about damaging drum heads, your choice of drum heads. If you're playing really heavy-handed music, really aggressive music, and you're using super thin heads, they are going to get wrecked faster. And that's the same reason why people who play softer stuff tend to go for thinner heads. Sensitivity is good, but there is a loss in durability. And the last thing is the types of sticks that you use. Round tips are the primary aggressor for this issue. Acorn tips, almond tips, less so, provided that the drum is at a good angle. It just has to do with the amount of surface area that is distributing the energy when you're hitting the drum. The issue with the round tip is basically that at any point on the tip, you're only touching the head with a very small amount of surface area. You can think of it like the difference between a pickaxe and a sledgehammer. They're both things that you're swinging, but there's a tiny amount of surface area distributing all of that energy with something like a pickaxe or with a round tip. If you're dealing with an acorn tip or an almond or something like that, it's spread over a wider surface area. All right, let's check out the sound of these aggressively dented drum heads. Now, you could probably hear, as I can hear, that the pitch of the heads from what we just did to them dropped a little bit. I mean, we were hitting them like as hard as we could. So now, what we're gonna do is try and first get the dents out, and then we're gonna tune them back up, try and get them in tune again. Now, what we're doing right now is leaving the drums at tension. We're using a lighter, regular old lighter, and the idea here is to basically heat up with the drum at tension the area of the dent so that it softens and gets kind of pulled back by the rest of the tension into a flat surface again. This is really tricky to do because a little goes a long way and it's kind of hard to see when the flame is on it or near it. You can definitely burn straight through the head super duper fast. So we're talking about just like 4 or 5 seconds at most. A couple of the ones that I did today, you can see where I did it because there's a little bit of a scorch mark, and other ones went really well. But suffice to say that it does work, it does do the thing. You just have to be really, really careful and stop and check often. Now, because I know that people are going to want to hear it, this is a comparison of the dented in head and then where we took it to after we burned the dents out and tuned it back up. Clearly, it's not the same pitch as when it's dented in. We tuned it back up to our initial sound to kind of like get back to where we would want to play it again. I wouldn't say that this is better than where we were before with the dents if I had just tuned them back up, because there's a real possibility of having weakened the head with all of the fire that we put on it, and especially considering that it is really just kind of a cosmetic fix, and if you have that many dents, it's probably time to change that head. You probably should just change it out. If you have one somewhere on there that's bothering you, I could see that being reasonable to take it out, but in terms of the idea of this being a fix for a damaged head, that's really not what's happening. I think it's fair to say that this, as a myth, which it kind of is, we're kind of busting this here as far as the idea of this being a repair job for a head that needs repair. For me personally, in situations where I'm playing a lot of brushes, if there's some way that like a couple of dents got in the head and I need to use that drum for brushes, it could catch the wires on the brush. But all things considered, this is not a way to make an old head new or any kind of replacement for just putting a new batter on the drum. There's so much that goes into the way these heads are made that there's really no substitute for just putting a new one on there. Now, one thing that I know now from doing these videos is that the material that drum heads are made of is fairly precisely made, and when you apply heat, especially extreme heat like this, to a small area, you're modifying the structure of that area of the drum head, and there's a possibility of it becoming brittle or getting thin or causing it to make the drum difficult to tune afterward because you don't have that even distribution of both material and tension once it's done. So you do need to think about these things before you start to mess with the drum heads, especially if you're not really able to get new ones right away in case it doesn't go the way you want. Now, something important to note about this is that this isn't really about fixing the sound of the dented head. This is much more of just an aesthetic choice. There's the possibility of that this is protective a little bit of the spots where there's a really big dent that could maybe be a weak spot, but it's reasonable to think that burning that spot with a lighter or a match could weaken that spot in a different way. More realistically, if your head is looking like this and you're thinking about, burning dents out of it, it's probably just time to replace that batter head. But in the end, as far as the fix that this is, it really is just visual. All right, thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Click the notification bell below so you hear about all of our new episodes. We're still doing tutorials every Tuesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Please check out the Patreon. The link is below. All of this stuff right now that you see before you is happening because of Patreon and because of the supporters over there. They're really giving us a lot of help in making it possible for us to continue to do this. There's a lot of special things going on over there, symbol series, a few other upcoming secret things that we've been talking about here. So please check it out, see if there's a tier that works for you. Help out if you can. And lastly, tell me your dent stories. If you've got dent stories, if you've got fixing dent stories, if you've got dents that broke stories, I want to hear your dent stories.